Hi and welcome to another gaming video, and in today's video I'm going to be, using a PSP for a week in 2025. So if you've been watching my channel, you know that I've picked up a couple of PSPs, got them working, and I had a trip planned, so I thought it was a great way of getting in some gaming. I couldn't decide whether to bring my Switch Lite or a PSP. I went with the PSP because I'm still a little bit nervous about taking consoles with me that get broken and lost or stolen. And PSP, well, versus the Switch Lite, it's the cheaper option. So I haven't owned a PSP since about 2022, and I bought two recently, got them working, a black one. And then I bought this one. This is the white one, and this is the PSP that came with me. So, how did using a PSP for a week go? Well, I took a huge selection of games with me, and I thought it's a great opportunity. There's no distraction from other things. My other consoles aren't sitting there calling me. This was purely the only thing I had, or other than my phone, but I don't do gaming on my phone. This was the only thing I had to play games on for a week. I do like the PSP. In 2025, I'm still surprised how well the games look and feel. I mean, it's a portable PS2, but the smaller screen and its handheld form, it just makes it seems to age better than the PlayStation 2. So, like I said, I brought a big selection of games with me so I could give them a fair chance. So, how did it go? Well, I got a brand new battery in this and a big selection of games. So, the first game that I checked out was Little Big Planet. Now, I am a massive fan of Little Big Planet, and to be able to play it on the go is superb. I love it on the Vita and Little Big Planet on the PSP. The first portable entry for Little Big Planet is absolutely fantastic. So I really did enjoy playing that on there. So the next game is Call of Duty Roads to Victory. It's a good classic, older style sort of Call of Duty. But on the PSP, the one thing that makes it really hard to play is the lack of a second stick. To be fair, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, the game is great. But the control schemes just make it a little bit awkward. So you obviously you move around with this, but you've got to use these to look around, and it's a bit clunky. It slows down the pace of the game. I did get quite into it, but it's not a fast first-person shooter, and that is down to the PSP itself and the controls of it, the lack of a second stick. But it is a fantastic game. Next game is Space Invaders Extreme. So I'm a big retro fan. I did enjoy the game itself, but whoever created the game, they just put so much on the screen. It was so distracting, and it really did detract from the game. It kind of reminded me when I was playing Tetris DS on the Nintendo DS. There's so much other stuff going on the screen that it took away from the gameplay. But the gameplay itself, I did really enjoy. Next up is Wipeout Pure. Fantastic game. I loved the Wipeout series. I loved it when it first came out on the PlayStation, and to find it again on a portable system is amazing. That is a game you cannot fault. Playing it doesn't look like it's sort of 20 years old. It's fantastic. Super fast paced and just an amazing futuristic racing game. Next up is Sega Rally. So I'm a huge fan of the Sega, well, everything Sega, but especially the Sega Saturn, and I loved Sega Rally. So to find that there's a port or a version on the PSP is superb. Absolutely loved it. I always found Sega Rally on the Saturn to be quite difficult, but they've kind of changed that a little bit. It's easier than the Saturn version. Superb, love it. As any Sega fan is going to love it. The Sega Rally on the PSP is brilliant. Next up is God of War Chains of Olympus. So this game really shows off the power of the PSP. It's just one of those games that if you've got a PSP, you need it. There were two games. You got Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta, both absolutely fantastic. It is so hard to believe that this is a portable version because it just runs so well and looks absolutely stunning. Next up, I went for a platformer this time, SpongeBob Yellow Avenger. I didn't play that for very long. Long intros, lots of reading, not something I like to do, and I just couldn't sort of really grasp the whole control system. No. I played this for a very short amount of time before I got frustrated with it. Next up is Micro Machines V4. Big fan of original Micro Machines, Micro Machines 2 Turbo on things like the Mega Drive. But I never really got into Micro Machines 3 or 4 when they added in that sort of semi 3D. So I didn't really like this at all. Didn't play that for very long either. Next up is FIFA, and as you know, I have a copy of FIFA for every system, even if I don't own the system. So of course I'm going to have it for PSP, and I like to play a bit of FIFA. Don't have any idea who plays for what team in what league, etc. So it doesn't matter what version I have, and you can't go wrong. It's FIFA. It runs fantastically. You get that kind of PS2 era FIFA, and it's fantastic. Next up is Resistance Retribution. Now I absolutely love the Resistance series. You've got 1, 2 and 3 on the PS3, and then you've got Resistance, can never remember what it's called, on the PS Vita. All 4 of those games were first person, stunning games. But Resistance Retribution, it went for a third person, and yeah, didn't like it. It was all right. It suffers from, yet again, having only one stick, so it's the weakest entry in the Resistance range, and I think that's purely because it's one, a third person, and two, just it's not fast paced. And next up is Disney Cars. Now I've played this on quite a few different systems like the DS and the PSP, and it's actually a decent racing game. I mean, you might think, well, it's a kid's game. It's not. It's a decent racing game. It's quite hard actually. It's not easy, even though it clearly is sort of a child orientated game. Really enjoyed that. Next up is GTA Chinatown Wars. Now that is one of my favourite games of all time. I've played it on the PSP before. I've played the PS Vita port, which is taken from the Android version. I've played it on the Nintendo DS, one of those rare games that's rated mature for the DS, and it is superb. So it's a mix between the very first sort of GTA and GTA 2, where they had that top-down view, and then they moved to 3D with things like GTA 3 onwards. Chinatown Wars it's top-down, but it's 3D at the same time, and it is absolutely fantastic. I love it on the DS, but it looks better on the PSP. It's a cel-shaded style game. The PSP runs a little slower but looks better. The DS runs faster, but it's got sort of less. The graphics look a little less. I prefer the PSP version purely for its look, and it's fantastic, amazing game. And the final game is a game that I've never played before. This is called Loco Roco, and it's very weird. It's a platformer, but instead of moving your character, you move the landscape. You sort of tilt it and move it, and sort of roll your person or wherever he is around in the landscape. It really does scream 20 years ago when developers were trying to push the boat out, make something different, not follow the norm, break trends. And yeah, I did enjoy that. I found it quite difficult, but it's a fantastic game. And that is it. That is the list of games. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games there that I played over the course of a week. There are a lot of other games on there. I think there's about 1900 games released for the PSP. Some good, some rubbish, like you get with every system. So I always kind of regret buying a PSP. After a few years, I kind of forget its shortcomings, buy another one, and then I remember what I don't like about it. So I'm a massive fan of the sequel, the PS Vita. It fixed a lot of the problems that came with the PSP. Obviously, the Vita had some of its own drawbacks. The PSP is an okay console. Now, I'm going to annoy a lot of people here because it's more than an okay console. for its day, it's a powerful beast, but there's just too many things that aren't right with it. Lack of stick, clunky UMD. Back in 2004, it was amazing. I mean, it's released the same year as the Nintendo DS, and while the DS was infinitely more successful, the PSP did a pretty good job. The DS followed Nintendo's sort of, I'm going to release a cut down handheld, whereas the PSP really was the first time the world had seen a portable console that was capable of home titles. You have to give the PSP its due, but I've spent a week playing it, and I don't think I'm going to continue. And in ways, I do regret taking it away with me. I probably should have took my Vita with me, which I infinitely love way more than a PSP, or even my Switch Lite. But there's just something about this that I don't enjoy it. It's a good console. It's got some great games, and if you like those games and you're looking for a reasonably budget, I mean, these are starting to increase in price again, but the PSP is just not a console for me. This is going to be a shelf piece, I think, just something to show off. And I'm going to go back to my Vita and my Switch Lite because, yeah, excellent hardware for its time. Really did amazing things for the gaming world. It showed us that you could play full-scale games in small form factor. So you had the PSP, and then you had the Vita, infinitely more powerful. Nintendo did bump up the DS with the 3DS, but it was still a cut-down system. It wasn't until we got to like the Switch where you had this hybrid home and portable that they entered. But you've got things like the Steam Deck and these Windows, sort of like the ROGs, they owe a lot to Sony and the PSP for bringing this big AA titles, home consoles, down into these sort of smaller handhelds. But for me, the PSP is an okay system. I mean, there are a couple of games, but I've got a Vita. You can play most PSP games on the Vita, and you can take advantage of things like the twin sticks and just the whole system feeling a lot better. That is me using a PSP for a week. I had a good time. I enjoyed the games that I played. Some of them were fantastic. But will I dip back into using this as a sort of a go-to gaming console? No. So let me know what you think. Are you a fan of the PSP? Are you still a fan? Were you a fan? Or have you moved on? Do you prefer the Vita over the PSP, even though the Vita was, well, sold poorly, very poorly in comparison to anything else, including the PSP? But I'm a big fan of the Vita, if you hadn't already worked that out. So yeah, let me know. What's your thoughts on the Sony PSP and using it in 2025? Link, like, subscribe, enjoy.